Today we are starting the full-size front view portrait. So you can choose a reference photo and clip it to your board and make sure that your gray paper is vertical, so it's tall. And you can start by doing some measurements. So we're going to do this the same size as a reference picture, so to the same scale. And the easiest way you can do this is either by measuring with your pencil or using a ruler and measuring with the ruler. Now, because we're working with a pastel, you can make a little mark on the ruler with the pastel and then just wipe it off later. You also have the option of working with centimeters instead of inches because sometimes the centimeters will fit more evenly into a measurement, but again, totally up to you. And you're starting off with the measurement for the top of the head to the chin, so the longest measurement of the head. So we're starting with the top of the head to the chin, and then once you've found that, you're going to be drawing a light dividing line that's dividing the face equally in half down the center line. But again, you're drawing this super light. All of these marks should really be very light pressure. And then you're going to figure out the width of the head. Now, sometimes there's hair there, so I'm just measuring cheekbone to cheekbone, which is pretty much the widest place on the head, and you're going to transfer that measurement. Make sure what happens on one side happens to the other, so whatever measurement that is, it's equal on both sides. You can then measure to the eye line. I'm checking out where the eye line is. I'm aligning the top part of my ruler to the top of the head and just figuring it out that way. This is going to help you with proportion, but we're also going to review some of those rules, like the eyes are halfway in the head, and you can also check if that's the case with your model. Now, I've shown you before that I like to measure with a pencil, so you could opt to do both. Like I was taking the measurement of the hair, how thick the hair is over on that side, and I'm checking it on the other side. You use your pencil point, and then that index finger closes off the measurement, and then you make that little mark. And I always double check when I'm doing it that way. It does go by faster, so it's a little bit quicker than if I were to actually measure with a ruler, but do whatever feels most comfortable. Really, what I want you focused on is getting the gesture of the head. So that means the outline of the shape of the head. I want you to include the hair if your model has some hair. Sometimes there's volume to hair, sometimes not, depending on your model. And you're going to be drawing that out all very lightly. And then we're going to go to addressing the features and where those are all placed. Make sure to also include the neck in your gesture, again, going lighter than you think, so barely visible in case you need to adjust it. As a reminder, women tend to have a little bit thinner of a neck compared to an adult man. One thing I really recommend is having one of those proportion guidelines that I printed out for you guys right near where you're working, and it should be one from the front view because that can help. And we're going to be starting off with our proportion rules. So because I have the measurement on the hairline, I'm just showing you there, that is my distance from the hairline to the eyebrow line. You can see I'm transferring that directly over, and you could do this with a ruler. You can measure it out, but I'm just using my finger and the pencil tip to help me with that. And then I'm going to go from the eyebrow line to the nose line to figure out that measurement too. So if you divide the face from the hairline to the chin into thirds, that should give you the eyebrow line and the bottom of the nose line. But if your person is turned or their head is tilted or angled up or down, that can change the length of the nose or that distance between the eyebrow and the top of where the hairline begins. At this point, I'm drawing everything super light in case I make a mistake, and it happens all the time, so you want to make sure that you're drawing light as well. I'm taking that distance from the bottom of the nose to the top lip, and remind yourself from the bottom of the nose to the chin, if you divide that into thirds, you should find where the two lips meet on the top third. You can even measure the length of the mouth. So this should make things a little bit less complicated because we're working to scale, but I still want you to think about those proportion rules and to look at that proportion guideline sheet as you're working on this and to double check everything. I'm going to go ahead and label some of these lines just so I don't get confused. You can do that too if it'll help. So I'm going to label the eyebrow line and the eye line and the nose and where the two lips meet, just so I know where everything is going to be placed. At this point, I have everything gridded out, ready for the features to be placed within that head. All right, so I like to start off with the eyes first. I feel like eyes are the first place that people look to when they're looking at a drawing, and they're also the most exciting to draw or paint as artists. So remember, one eye fits in between the two eyes, and I'm checking on this model, and that is the case with her as well. So I'm measuring the distance between the two eyes, and I'm actually going to draw that onto my paper and make sure I have it correct and equal. What happens on one side happens on the other, and if I need to move something, I will. And then I'm doing the measurements for the eye, and this is something I double or triple check just to make sure I have the width of each eye correct. The width of the nose typically equals the length of one eye if you're looking at the face from the front view. At this stage, when I'm drawing the nose, I don't put in very much information. I put 2 brackets on the bottom of the nose to kind of represent the cartilage there. And then I will go in and draw the bridge of the nose up by where the 2 eyes are and curve those in. But I won't draw like 2 straight lines right down to the nostrils. The nose wouldn't be like that anyway. It would have to be more like a cone shape. So you always want to go sparingly when you're describing the nose from the front. There aren't that many lines in the nose. Really, the only lines that occur are in the nostril holes, and that's it. Okay, so I'm very loosely going about. I have the gist of where the eyebrows are going to go, the gist of where the length of each eye is, a little bit of the nose, and now I'm going to go to the mouth and try and get the top lip versus the bottom lip. And again, no heavy outlines. If you put an outline on your form, it'll flatten it and make it seem more like a flat shape rather than something that has volume. So you always want to draw lightly and don't outline or leave a broken line or outline as pale as you possibly can. The no outlining thing is going to come up again and again in this drawing, in other drawings, and in painting as well. The line between the 2 lips often tends to look like kind of like a flattened M shape. It has like 2 mountains, 2 little hills, but they're flats. And the top lip kind of looks like that too. It looks like 2 mountains, but it has to be right in that like line that's dividing the face in half. So that Cupid's bow needs to be like 50% on one side and 50% on the other. Here's the bridge of the nose that I was talking about. It actually kind of connects into the eye socket. So here's where it's important to think of the face as a skull. So not just flesh, but you want to think about the actual structure of what's beneath that flesh. So we actually draw like the eyebrow and the bridge of the nose like an eye socket. So it's going to have that eye socket type shape because technically the eyebrow is riding the ridge of the eye socket. So you can see it kind of looks like a pair of glasses, and it looks more like a skull at this point. And I'm doing this very pale, very light. And I'm going to do it to both sides. The nose is one of the hardest features to pull off because when you view it from the front, it's really all shading. But one way that it can simplify things is to think of the nose more in terms of geometric form. So the underside of the nose kind of forms this trapezoid shape, and you can look at that cheat sheet that I provided for you, that proportion sheet, because it shows you how to do this. There's kind of like a center line down the bridge of the nose, and it flares out right near the tip. The tip of the nose, a lot of artists consider like a sphere, like a ball. And you want to make sure what happens on one side happens on the other. And then there's these planes on the left and to the right. So it is kind of like a cone, but it definitely has some planes that are a little bit flatter than others. So I'd like you to try this too. Again, all very light. While we're in this vicinity, we might as well address the ears. So the ears are going to go near the eyebrow line. I'm going to put them just a little bit below the eyebrow line and somewhere near the bottom of the nose. So right here. And I'm going to do the same thing to the other side because that's typically where the ears are going to be placed. And because we're doing ears from a front view, you're really not going to see that wide of an ear, but that's also something you can measure. If the hair is covering the ear, then that's okay. You don't really have to draw the ear unless you can see a part of it, like the lobe. If you can see that, then you would put it in. I know we talked about eyes being important, but we haven't really gotten to them yet. They are one of my favorite features to draw. And when you're drawing, the eyes are oftentimes not as wide open as most students think they are. It's actually something that you can measure. So you can measure how wide open the eye is and take that to your paper, that measurement, like what you see me doing there. That's because I'm measuring off camera and taking that measurement over here to make sure I have them the right amount of open. And then you can do the same thing to the other eye. And you start off with this loose kind of gesture. Think like a flattened football shape or like a surfboard. They have kind of a pinched corner on either side. The next stage is really my favorite part. It's placing the irises and starting to do some of the shading. And I work one area at a time, but there are other approaches to this. I'm going to pause the video here and let you guys catch up, and then I'll show you in a little bit how you can add on and add some shading to this drawing.